Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021 at 5:34 p.m. We are at City Council Chambers, Meadows Place City Hall. We're calling this meeting to order and announce we have a quorum present. Tia Baker is not here at the present. Oh, Tia Baker is present. Tia is in the house. Okay. Item number B is first reading of Resolution 2021-07, identifying Dorrance Lane Rehabilitation Design as a project and approving EDC expenses not to exceed $150,000 for the project. And I need to read that. But where am I at? Oh, there it is. Okay, that is item B is Resolution 2021-07, identifying Dorrance Lane Rehabilitation Design as a project and approving EDC expenses not to exceed $150,000 for the project. This is the first reading of this resolution. And that concludes the reading. Do I have a motion to accept that reading? John, you're late. Second. Second by Rick. On the reading of it? Yeah. Hold on just a second. I'm trying to find. Well, she's recording it. Oh, there she is.
3 minutes, Steve. 3 minutes.
I had to just come up here because of this new. I will say, Charlie, if you're going to update the council, you need to update the picture.
No.
So I have a question. We talked about this last summer about a road map. Do we have that yet? Last summer when we put this on the budget, we talked about putting the Steve Besner 12222 Meadowcrest Drive. Last summer when we talked about this at the budget session, we had said that, I remember me and you, Rick, were talking about it, that we were going to put together a plan or a roadmap before we actually start spending money. Has that happened?
Yes, and we had a public hearing on it.
So we had not a public hearing, we had an open house or
Not a public
whatever
hearing.
we called it in November to kind of go over the options and talk about concrete versus asphalt, whatever. From there, we had some community feedback. We decided to go with concrete for our roadways, not asphalt. For Dorrance, it was determined we were going to go with a 5-foot sidewalk instead of 4. We'll talk about the others later. And that we're going to have a phased project on Dorrance over the next how many years. And the first project is going to be designed from Kirkwood to Bloomington, actually to the dog park. So, and then
on the design portion.
On the design.
Sorry, Bloomington to the dog park.
I'm sorry, Kirkwood to the dog park.
Right, to Bloomington.
Yeah. And from there, once that project is done, then we'll continue westward down Dorrance until we get to Derry Ashford. And then we'll start working on either Montecito or Mulholland, and that'll be determined by the council at that time. Okay. So the roadmap is, Dorrance.
Roadmap is we're going to go straight down Dorrance with concrete 5-foot sidewalks.
Yeah. So Dorrance.
And we're replacing plumbing too, or sewers.
Yes.
And all that.
All water lines will be replaced. All sanitary crossings will be replaced. We're televising the storm sewer. Plan is to reuse the existing storm sewer except for if we've got a problem for some reason. We're increasing the slope of the roadway to 0.4%, which should help reduce bird baths in the future. We're going with stamped concrete for all crosswalks, but no other decorative or traffic calming features. So that is the basic roadmap, and once you get done with the 3 main roadways, then you're going to start picking out which ones go after, whether that's by assessment or which ones we think will bring the most value to the city. And the intent is actually the next time the county does a county mobility bond, try to get some of the rest of Dorrance paid for through a mobility bond.
But if we do all of Dorrance and Montecito, that's got to be 10 years?
Possibly longer than that if we don't get mobility funding.
Right.
And it's going to be how much appetite the citizens have for taxes. We either don't reduce the property tax number as the evaluations go up in order to put more money into the roadway, or if the citizens want their property tax rate reduced, then you're not going to be able to do as much roadway going forward. And that's going to be a yearly discussion with the citizens. What is the appetite for these new roadways?
So this 150 is just for the engineering. So the
half the engineering, the city's kicking in the other 150 to get 300,000 for the engineering
from Bloomington to Kirkwood, and then I assume the construction will be in the next budget cycle this summer.
Correct.
Okay, so that's when people want to weigh in on that. They should weigh in at the budget meetings next summer.
Right. And the first package from Kirkwood to Oxford Glen, construction on that's probably going to be $1.5 to $2 million.
Kirkwood to Oxford Glen.
Yeah. It's the
midpoint.
Right,
the middle one. Right. Okay.
That's going to be $1.5 to $2 million. And so where's that money?
There's not reserves for that.
What's that?
There's not reserves in 1.5 for that.
That'd wipe us out.
Right. Okay.
And so how much can we get EDC to fund? How much is coming from general fund? That's going to be the discussion.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Besner. All right. Where were we? I had a motion and a second. The motion was Kurt. Rick was the second. Any other discussion, council? All in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Okay, now we're on item C, which is discussion with Hewitt Zollers regarding the city's facility review agreement and plan. I understand that you've got some stuff for us to watch, and you're going to inform us all. Council, I want to remind us that we've spent thus far about $25,262.50, and we have about out of $63,232, which was the allotted contract. Okay. So I just wanted to remind everybody where we were. All right. And with that, I'm going to turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, we're excited to be here tonight because it's taken quite a trajectory over the last year. We had some starts and stops, and Nick came on board, and then some elections happened back in November or late last year, and just felt like it was best for the process of this. And as the mayor mentioned, because there are still quite a bit of funds available, that if the new council sees something different, then this is obviously a good time to provide their input to help us along the process. So of the $63,000 fee to Hewitt Zollers, which was probably the beginning of January 2020 that we got contracted for that, there's really two parts to this. The facility condition assessment and the facility needs assessment. So the facility condition assessment, for all intents and purposes, is complete, even though the city hasn't seen a final copy of that. I promise you will see a final copy of that. We've just got a little bit of housekeeping to do on our end with that, but there were a total of 8 facilities that we looked at, and we basically have provided a 6-page report of each one of those where we're looking at deficiencies and what would the cost be to make improvements to bring them up to today's standards. So we look at things like mechanical, electrical, fire alarm, some big deficiencies. We're not opening up walls. We're not looking at structural steel. It's more of a visual assessment. So there's the 8 facilities that we looked at. The reason I highlighted the EMS and Fire Station 3 is because those you're going to see in the facility needs assessment. Those are 2 facilities that we've put to the side, and we're not going to look at opportunities to expand those in any manner, or even look at rearranging those in any manner. So I'll give you kind of a brief view of this, and this is kind of what you'll see. And there's some, late on an evening, if you want to look at this, that's good. But so this is an example of the report for City Hall. So there'll be some photographs with that, and some.
Hey, excuse me, Chris, if I can.
Yes.
I know you want to get energized.
Okay.
But you're going to need to stick close to that mic.
Roger. Yeah. So I'll scroll through this. So, it talks about making a visual assessment of the outside. It says building envelope. I'll try to enlarge it some more. I really don't want to spend a lot of time on this. It's more just give you an overview of the update and the progress, where we're at. And you'll be receiving a draft copy, here in the next few weeks, to look at that and review and comment on that. So our mechanical engineers were out here. Our electrical engineers came out, and we toured the 8 buildings, and they made comments in here about things that they observed while here. And then if you keep scrolling down, there's things like estimated repair costs, $9,000. So there's varying items that our team went and identified. Again, these can be deferred maintenance items that you just keep, pushing down the road, or, they could be bundled into whatever happens in the needs assessment portion of the project. If there's rooms that get reconfigured, some of that would obviously get absorbed into there as well. So this is an example of what that facility condition assessment begins to look like and identify, for you, the city, and for the council.
Pardon me.
Any questions on that? So moving on to the portion where we really wanted to get your input is the facility needs assessment. And these are the 6 buildings that we looked at. I actually forgot to include it. So we've actually we've gone through all the buildings. We actually have drawn them up. So we have floor plans of all of these 6 buildings. So these were the ones that we identified that we would look at, interview the varying departments and the staff members that are behind these buildings or in these buildings. So the first thing that we start out with is a questionnaire. So we can begin to understand the organization, how many people they currently have, and what we're ultimately trying to do is, and why we're doing this is, we're running out of space. where we had to do some reconfiguring, last year when Nick came on board, and some other things that happened as a result of that. So as good stewards of the facility, we're trying to look ahead. So this questionnaire had the trajectory of 15 years or so, and it's a 9-page or 7-page questionnaire that we passed around to the varying departments. It asks them their organizational chart, hours of operation, storage needs, who needs to be in an office, who should be in a cubicle, all different kinds of things, security concerns. So we start with that to get staff engaged with that, to get their buy-in and have them become part of the process. And this must be Courtney's, because I think Courtney's the only one that didn't actually fill one out. So, but I promise you that other folks did complete theirs, and they do are filled out. Unfortunately, Courtney's not in the room, so. So with that questionnaire, we begin to circulating to folks so they can begin to project, look out, and see what. So we can begin to come with some standardization of room sizes. Because any municipality that we've worked with over the years, somebody may get stuck in a broom closet, an old storage room, because that's where you had free space. Some people's offices may be too big, or they may be too small. So this is a tried and true method that we've used for planning, just to get some square footage numbers to identify who should really be in an office, like you see here, and varying office sizes. And then we've got workstations. Who should be in a 6x6 workstation? Who should be in a 10x10 workstation? And then we have some varying size conference rooms as well, to identify, do we need a conference room for a 6-person conference room for council? Probably wouldn't be ideal. So that's how we kind of look at this. And again, we're just trying to capture big picture quantities of space. So we went through that, and I think this is from about June, where we hit the pause button, and I'll give you a high level of the information that's here. This is what we like to refer to as the recipe for success. It's the program. So you'll see the varying buildings that we looked at. City Hall currently is 9,360 square feet. Through the interview process, the questionnaires, meeting with staff, the projections that they were requesting was 13,800. Now, I'll just, before we dive into the weeds, that did not include any improvements to potentially expanding the chambers, and that's obviously a big item that we want to get your all's input on to get council's thoughts on that as well. So the big areas of growth of all the facilities of the 6 facilities were City Hall of about 4,500 square feet, and then a few hundred square feet of expanding the restrooms, making some modifications over at the pool and the rec center. So at City Hall, you can see the varying groups that we interviewed and sat down and met with. Police department, they were actually the ones that a majority of the space here at City Hall that they're requesting for their needs. And you can see, some of the staff projections. So anywhere you see the yellow is where something has expanded, increased, risen. So these are all the varying spaces at City Hall, and then you can see there's a request to expand the the supervisor's area over at the PD. So, and then even we sent over this little snippet to, not only become a sounding board, because part of the process is there's always an executive committee that is part of the process. We want to hear the needs of staff, but ultimately, I don't want to say somebody's going to ask for the billiards room or the break room with the foosball table, big enough for that. But we ultimately will draw up and test the spaces that staff are requesting, just to verify the square footage and make sure we're carrying the right amount of square footage in the program. So what I wanted to show you, any questions with that? Let me see if I can fire it up. So what's critical is getting council, the executive committee, to this, some guidance of what they would see the consultant would like us to look at. But really what will happen next, and this is from another municipality, is basically what we'll do is you'll see the program there on the table, and we'll take the square footages that are being requested by staff, and it becomes a very fun and interactive session. We call it a blocking session. So what happens is the spaces that are being added onto or increased to will have blocks of space, and then we'll want to understand where do we want to put them in the building? Where do we want to put a conference room? Who should be next to who? What departments have critical adjacencies where they want to be in close proximity to each other? So this is a kind of like the next step is, that's why it's so crucial to get the program nailed down and identified so we're carrying the right amount of square footage. Because it wouldn't do us, the consultant, any good to plan for you if we're only looking at maybe not enough or too much. We may not get exactly, but we want to try to do our best to hone in on what that square footage is that we should be planning for as we look at this. Because there may be opportunities that we can squeeze an office within the existing facility. There may be that we may have to expand in one of the facility, and that could be going out or going up. And then through the process of the facility condition assessment, we can also identify and give you a peace of mind. Does it make sense to put those dollars, make those improvements to that facility? So you see the programs identified, working through the varying groups to understand what spaces work well next to each other. And here you can see we got a couple of different colored blocks of different groups that we're planning there. And then from that, just like we would with you, is we would look at, where do we squeeze those people in, or where do we add on to the building? Or the third potential option is, would you need a new facility? So we will create floor plans, and then we look at site plan options of where those additions would potentially be handled or be accommodated on the site. Is there any big existing trees we want to avoid? Where are we going to need to increase any parking? So ultimately what we can do is provide a cost estimate at the end of all this process that begins to help everybody in this room understand what it's going to take to have these ideas come to fruition.
And that's based back on those original surveys that you took with the staff.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct? All the blocking and all that stuff comes from those surveys?
Well, it comes from the program. Now, we haven't gotten into that level of detail because what we really wanted to get buy-in from council, the executive group, is are there things that we're missing that you would like to see us identify? Do we feel between municipal court and the council chamber that this space is adequate? Again, I touched upon that earlier. I've heard that. We've all talked about the need to expand this because of some of the influx that we have from court. We're also in a different era of COVID as well. So it's really, we wanted to get buy-in from everybody of, is there maybe something that we should add to the program, additional square footage that we need to plan as we plan for the future, before we get too far down the road. And what we don't want to do is present to you our findings, our proposal, and everybody's like, no, that's not what I had envisioned.
Council, I don't know if anybody else has been through this type of exercise before. I've been through it several times. Once when engineering was moving over to the Travis building, I've also helped facilities and public transportation for new buildings, helping other departments work through it. Really what this is going to come down to is, do we agree with this personnel assessment? That's going to really drive the space.
Gotcha.
And, do we actually see our police department going from 32 to 49 people? Probably a little excessive. Do we see a communications director needed for the city? Do we see 3 additional clerks needed for the city, or do we see 2 and they kind of share responsibilities? That's the questions we need to answer for our vision of the city. That'll give them the direction they need to work forward on the rest of the assessment.
So they're waiting on answers from us at this point.
Correct. So I don't know how council wants to do this. Do we want to go, position by position? Do we want to go group by group? How detailed do we want to get?
I think this is going to be difficult without doing this during budget season, or at least some point.
No, because these are not positions we're adding immediately next budget season.
It'd be nice to know. I guess we need to know what they're going to cost, right? What's the cost to us per position, or some range that we can use to determine, is this a need? And if it is, what's it going to cost?
I would not do it that way, and I'd recommend not doing it that way.
Kurt, I agree with Rick on this one.
Yeah.
This is not to justify. This is to see the overall need. And if we agree it's a need, then we get into, can we pay for it? Because sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes the answer is not now.
And so what they did on the new Justice Center is they determined, as the county builds out, how many courtrooms are we going to need? They built the shell of the building for that. There were entire floors that were not finished out with the initial construction. And as new courts get added, they build out those spaces. So, you really look at, we're not growing population, so we don't have to plan for that. Mm-hmm. However, there are other functions. Do we want, like our parks, we've added to our parks. Does that mean we need another person? Does it, as we get more programming going to draw people to our city, does that require additional people? Or could you sub that out to a party planner or something like that? Those are other options you can do. We've got, with Colleen, she does a lot of that programming herself. If and when she leaves and we hire somebody new, we either need to make sure that person has the same energy and vision, or we might have to divvy up some, get people with different skill sets. And that's why, we need to form the basic framework for this. And we might say we need 7 offices. Mm-hmm. We're going to guesstimate on what those people will be, but as time goes on, that may shift and change.
It certainly has here in the past 7-8 years.
Right.
So,
This sounds like a discussion that's going to take quite some time to determine what.
Possibly. And if it goes beyond today, that we can, communication director. So that's basically a PIO. Charlie does a lot of that work for us now. We also have Tom Erickson and Josh Merritt. So we're subbing out the creation of our social media. Or you could hire a communications director that did that for you or oversaw it rather than the mayor doing it. What is our vision for the city?
And that's where you have to come in saying where we're going to put them.
And
then you go to how much is it going to cost?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right, Rick?
That's the way I've done it. I'm sure that you guys have seen cities do it in different ways.
And I mean, there's a couple other things to think about here. Not only what Rick had mentioned about PD, for instance, is do we, this has a little bit more specificity than a spitball, but do we feel with what we've seen over history, the last 15 years, 10 years, like Rick said, would PD grow that much? Okay, not to pick on them, but they're the ones that are requesting a large amount of space. Is there somebody else within City Hall or another group that we feel that is growing and expanding? Or I can shed some light, and I'm not going to mention any names. Was a city nearby here some years ago. This was probably 12 years ago. We were working on an expansion of City Hall. Well, then this whole thing came up with an opportunity of a golf course, and then it was like, why don't we build a community center and a clubhouse and all that over there? So it's really it's getting buy-in from everybody here. Is maybe we, the architect and the executive committee, are looking in the wrong spots? Should we be looking at where should the growth and where should the expansion happen within this 1 square mile?
Oh, wonderful.
And so, let's look at parks. And they're trying to go from, I think it cut off here. With the aquatic staff, the lifeguards are going from 29 to 36. No change in the lifeguards, 2 additional camp counselors, couple recreational attendants, landscape crews, stuff like that. So the landscape crews, do we see wanting to do landscaping in-house? Or do we want to continue to tell our parks directors, just hire that done? And that's a decision we're going to make as a council that a future council may change.
Keeping in mind that this city has managed to do miracles with next to nothing because we've had people that are willing to do it. As well as you drove in, you probably drove right by the front of the school and saw the little gardens out there that are now really beautiful because Colleen and Lee and Danny and somebody from Public Works went out there and moved boulders and planted plants and mulch and all that kind of stuff. And it looks gorgeous. And it's going to be really an improvement. Would a contract person have given us that? I don't know. I think we're able to do that a lot of times in some sort of a mixed arena where you have them doing the heavy lifting on most stuff, but on specialties, she's picking up that, or parts is.
And then the other question
How
is,
much room does that take?
where does the landscape crew need space. Is that inside City Hall? Is it a slight expansion to the Discovery Center? Do we decide that we want to buy another house in close proximity just to house just to house all the equipment? They can put the equipment in the garage and stuff like that. Fairly cheap thing to do comparatively to building a building. However, you take another house off the tax rolls. All of that comes into play.
Okay, and now I'm going to have to defer to Kurt's statement which said this could end up taking a lot of time. So, Rick, I'd rather sit down in a bounce it off the wall session than trying to push for the next 20 minutes.
Right. Just understand that if we say we're going to come back on a Saturday session to go through this, and maybe we bring in our department heads to explain why they want these things, once again, we're going to defer progress on this. And I'm fine with that. It's just every time that let's not get into paralysis by analysis. Let's find a way to come up with a decision so we can move forward that at least gets us a number that we can look at prior to going into the budget session. Now, I don't think a lot of this is going to show up in next year's budget, except possibly some maintenance items on the existing facilities. I don't think we're going to bite off on building a new building next year. However, we need to start thinking about what building are needed in the next 5 years.
I would concur to that. John's leaving.
Yeah, John's like, I'm out of here.
So we can meet on Saturdays without anybody whining.
Well, that's okay. You can have the meeting on Saturday. That's fine. But, I agree with you. You've got to get the individual departments together and figure out, why they want this stuff and go from there. I think some of it's excessive, but, you have to ask for everything to get a little bit sometimes. So,
Chris, when did you interview staff? When was that? Was it
Probably
April?
March,
March,
I
right?
think we even started. Yeah. March and April.
Public Works Director.
Yeah, we got some new people here, and of course, my encouragement for council would be the landscape's changed a little bit, and so we need to ask staff if they feel the same way they did in April.
Absolutely.
About future needs, and so if we're going to pursue it, it'd be a good idea for staff to get in the same room together and talk with each other about what's changed.
I can tell you that we probably spent 6 months figuring out what the facility or what the space needs was for the transportation facility. And that was multiple meetings over multiple days. How much time does council want to put in on this? Now, it's good to put some time in it because this is going to be an expensive proposition. But like I said, I don't think we want to get into something where we're too afraid to make a decision. Let's get the information we need and, try to come up with a solution to move forward.
Or do we move forward? That's the other half. So, that decision's got to be made, first of all, in my opinion, because we've stalled and it's just dead. Mm-hmm. The landscape has changed, as you said, and I think so are our needs. City Hall's a good example. This room is a great example. At one time, it needed to be dealt with immediately, and now it's not an immediate need. So, but that's why I think we need to sit down and visit with it. I also agree, Rick, you can push this thing down and keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing it. Next thing you know, we're all gone, and the next group's going, well, I don't like anything they do. So, Kurt, your comments? What do you think?
It's tough because, yes, I like what we are doing. I like, what you guys are doing. This is great. It's something that's needed. But I also don't want to plan a whole facility based off of a number that is inflated by 25% staff-wise. So I think we do need some level of honing in before we can
Well, I can tell you that I want to cut at least 50% of these requested positions. And I think that is, we need to talk about that, justify it, and then how do you frame that in such a way that you don't demoralize staff? Mm-hmm. And that's, that's just part of being the executive committee, as you would have to make a decision. It's not our vision for the city to add these many peoples because X. And so I think a Saturday session would be appropriate. Staff with department heads, whether we would want Hewitt-Zollers there so they could hear what was going on, or we provide them the feedback based on the results. I don't know that they have a full Saturday meeting built into their budget. But I mean, that's all part of the discussion. And then once again, how much do you advertise it to the public, try to draw the public in and get their input as to what the long-term vision for the city is?
Tia, you do this kind of stuff from time to time.
Press it? Okay, now we're good. Okay. Being new, I remember sitting through the budget meetings, and I know the bigger goal was to look out 5, 10, 15 years. So I definitely think we need to stay on that path. I personally would like to interview department heads and also talk about ways to maybe repurpose different areas. Maybe there's different ways that we can repurpose some of the facilities that we already have. So I was not part of some of those discussions. So for me, I would like to talk about those things.
Kelly, you got anything to throw in? What do I care? John's leaving. Oh. John, you were here during the discussions. Turn on your mic.
It's on, and it works now. Finally, I get a working mic after all these years. It's good. I like it.
And guess
what? Can you hear me now?
And you can move it right next to you, too.
Right up there. No, I agree with everything everybody's saying, but you have to talk to the individuals that are requesting this. Our department heads, they're smart people. We hired them because they're smart and they're doing a good job. So we have to kind of look and follow their lead. But I agree, there's a lot of excessiveness in the staffing because our city is not going to get that much bigger, as far as taking care of the city, maintenance, things like that. Parks, yeah, I can see us getting more park stuff going on because people like that. But, as far as facilities, public works, we might need some more people. Equipment's getting older. They need to do some maintenance. We saw what happened with the wastewater plant for deferred maintenance for a number of years. Couldn't tell you how many numbers of years there were, but, railroad wheels don't lose their flanges overnight. Put it that way. And those are railroad wheels that split on top of the, what do you call that? Traveling bridge, that thing. But I think we do need some work in the maintenance side of the city because it's just been a skeleton crew doing really good work, and that exists in most every area that we got. We got a lot of really good people doing really good work, cross-training, covering the paths and making everything go. So let's get with those folks and find out their needs and work at it that way. And that's just my way of doing it if I was going to be here. So.
I'd figure on at least 3/4, more like a full day. If you're going to dig as deep as I think we're going to start getting into based on the comments I heard, I think we should make Steve attend.
Public comments always welcome, right?
I just turned it off. Okay, so yes, I did turn my mic off. I didn't mean to. Okay, so with that, let us put that to Courtney to try to put together a meeting. I prefer nothing personal. I'd prefer you were not there so we wouldn't feel rushed to get you in or out. And plus, I think staff and maybe some of council would feel a little bit more free to speak. And then what I want to make sure we do is come out with something that we can hand to Hewlett Zollars saying, we're pretty confident in how we feel about this, and plug that in. Is that a fair statement, Rick?
Right. I think we get down to what the true numbers are for our vision of the city. That will help them then plan some spacing requirements. I think we also should talk about, for this additional space, what are we thinking? We've talked about a separate building out back. Who goes in that? Do we want to build something for the PD that's a little bit separate? Because I just don't see how we're going to reconfigure their space to give them the room they need. And so if we move PD to the separate building, what admin staff can shift over here and not feel like they're disconnected from the rest of their group. And that's the difficulty we're going to have to balance is, these guys will talk about proximity and which groups, coexist with others and interact with others frequently. That changes over time, I can tell you that. And that's, my vision is if we do existing or expand space, it's not trying to scab it onto this building. It's adding some kind of facility out back with some kind of breezeway connection. Now that's my vision. Everybody else is going to have to bring their vision. Because, we talked about building out the front for the PD. I just don't think there's enough room there to make that work.
Depends on what you put there.
No, and you'd have to lose a tree.
Okay, so we're agreed on that. Courtney, will you try to put something together for that and see when you can get us all together? Does anybody have any questions for Chris at this point? Chris, you got any questions or comments for us?
Just thank you, Mayor and Council, for listening. And it really is it's vital that we get your all's input. Allows us to provide the guidance and our consulting services to you. But getting the program nailed down is the most important thing. And we can look at options, what's most viable, whether it's looking at off the front, off the back, standalone building, add-on, up, down. I mean, all that can be worked out later once the square footage numbers of the program are identified. So thank you, everyone.
All right. With that, we're going to call item C, discussion with Hewlett Zollars, to end and move on to item D. Council, we have about 7 minutes to discuss this. And this is discussing regarding facing the public during a time of, quote, crisis. I don't know if this is enough time to even discuss that.
Are you talking about the pandemic? Or are you talking about?
I'm talking about the freeze in particular.
Okay.
We have had to deal with the communication of the pandemic. We've been guided mostly by the governor's office and then the county, and we've done our thing ourselves. But in particular, the freeze where people were questioning what was going on. How do we reach them?
How do we reach them when they don't have power?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We had a emergency plan at one point. Do we know
still
where?
Have an emergency plan.
And do we know? Because after Ike, we put something together where we were going to have these poster boards in the pocket parks, and who was going to put the information out on there. I think we dust that off and see how to update it.
And I think you're right, Rick. And of course, this was like everybody else. This was supposed to freeze one day, and it's froze 5. So it kind of kept going. And so we didn't get our boards up. And we did things that some others didn't, like sand the darn bridges. Not everybody did. We did. So we did some good things. We had our PD out walking and all that stuff. So I think we can sit down with the chief, Nick, you and I, and the chief can sit down and ask him to dust that off, and we can visit with him on that and bring it out.
At one time, long ago, we had, I won't call them block captains, but sector captains. And our job was we would get the information out to them. They would distribute it to their 1 or 2 blocks. You know, we've got the CERT program, we've got scouts, we've got a few different groups. You know, maybe that's part of it is, hey, if we're going to be without power for a couple days and we can get flyers made and whatever, how are we going to cover the city to get the information out about what's going on?
And when do we do it? And when do we do it?
We also use Code Red on that. You use Code Red for that too. So that's all part of it.
That is all part of it.
That assumes the cell phone towers have power and are working and
Well, that's
All of that good stuff. So let us, I think I'm just going to stop it right there and say, let's get with the chief about dusting off the EOC. He had it in place and ready to roll. So let's review that with him before we go any further. All right. Does anybody else have anything to add or throw in right now on item D? All right. Since there seems to be nothing else to discuss, we are adjourned.